Guys, hope you're doing well. We have to remember what's really important this week is the macro fundamentals of the US-China meeting. Now, Trump is bringing some heavy-duty guns with him en route to China, and it's going to be a risk on, because have a look at the personnel on flight on Air Force One. We've got Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Larry Fink, Steven Schwartzman, who's the CEO of Blackstone, and we've got the CEO of GE, General Electric, and other CEOs. We've got Boeing, Goldman Sachs, Citi, MasterCard, Visa, Micron Technology, and so they're all going to China to broker deals, and so that therefore they'll come back with positive feedback from China, and potentially they'll get their deals, and they're going to make an exchange, and they'll enforce the partnership between US and China, and that's going to be risk on. So even if it was a failure and that no one got a good deal, Trump will still say it was a successful meeting, and then the news algos will pump. So that overrides all analysis. Okay, so you can look at sentiment, you can look at technicals, but it will depend on this meeting, and it will depend on what Trump says. So even if it was a failure, he would lie, and then the news algos will pump. Okay, so it's really important. We have to remember, sentimentally, is that there are still a lot of bears left. Okay, so we have to remember there's more bears than there are bulls. There's 3.6 bears versus the one bull. That is getting reduced though, so that's sort of note, which would be fairly risk off, but that's risk on. That's gonna basically override everything. Okay, so that's coming on. That's going on today, tomorrow, and Friday. On other news, we've got the new Fed chair sign it in today, and we've got a King's speech in the UK, and so that may mean that the pound will sort of simmer down and be less volatile, because the UK politicians aren't going to argue in the presence of the King. We're going to wait for the King's speech to be over with, and then I'll start bickering again, and there'll be that leadership contest. So a little bit of subdued volatility on the pound. The dollar's probably going to get pressured because of this risk on macro. And if we look at the bubbles, pound and dollar, they were having a big battle. And what's happened is that the crowd have shorted the pound. So what happens when we ever see a big dump on price action? What will normally happen the day after, the crowd will follow. They'll try and chase that price action because they want an easy buck. They see something fall heavy, and then they'll enter short, and by doing so, that will then make price go up. So we've got a weak Kiwi, a strong pound. I wouldn't be too enthused about being long pound, because tomorrow it's probably going to reverse because of what I was saying about the King's speech. Once that's over with, they'll start arguing again, and there's going to be that leadership contest. If Starmer doesn't back down, they're going to have a weak leader and a weak party, and they may even fragment and just fall apart. And it may be that Labour's not going to be a party of substance, in the future, and it will probably be Reform Conservatives as the two major parties, which would be pretty crazy. So currently, as it stands, you could look for pound longs, but you wouldn't want to hold on to that bias, because tomorrow we're probably going to reverse because of that leadership contest that we've got. So that's that. Okay, so that's being said, you looked at the bubbles. That's fine. We know that we are we are risk on at the big picture, but at the 24 hours, the crowd are trying to buy the dip, and I'll show you on the indices. I'll come to Discord. That's fine. We don't need to see that message. If we come to US 500, and like I was saying, right, so stock X or Y, anything, just like company X, company Y, if it moves 20% in 2 months, that's really bullish. If we have a 1% move down in a day, the crowd are all over it. They won't look at the 20% it's gained. They'll look at the 1% down move and go, oh, it must be a sell. But they're not looking left at all. They're not zooming out and they're not looking left, but they're just focused on the present moment. So we have this move here, and of course they're going to short because they've seen this and go, oh, this looks right. You know, we're all-time high. It must be a sell. Well, look what happened. Okay, and a very brutal example is this on the US 30. There, so that went long here, massive down move, shorted it. In fact, they probably had to sell it, and then they got caught. So they got caught here, and then they got caught here in the space of 2 hours. Okay, so it's very brutal. So you should really not be looking to sell. You should be looking for buys. But ideally, we get like a nice pullback in order to buy. Is that a sufficient pullback? It did pull back, but you kind of want it to come down a little bit more in order to get a good, good entry. But they end up selling it, and up we come. So that's the US 30, and it might be that DAX is making a channel. I know, admittedly, it's not a great up channel. This upper channel is fine. It could have probably respected that wick and that wick, but you can kind of see what I'm trying to go for. And we're making these this breakout on the channel, and I think the potential scenario is that they're going to short after the channel break with that bullish macro here. So the thing is, it's going to result in a risk on situation, because if it is successful, Trump will tweet it was successful. If it was a failure, Trump will lie and say it was a success. So basically, bears are going to be doomed, I think. So basically, I think that's it. I think that's the video done. To keep an eye on your news. Be careful with the pound, because we may get some news after the King's speech. And I think for me, I would be leaning towards selling the pound and buying the New Zealand dollar. So I'd probably be fading that move. I'll be reversing that move. Because that would be a risk-on situation. I'm pretty sure we're going to be risk-on. If we look at that analysis just now, DAX is looking okay. US 30, well, we had that move, and it's likely they're going to short, and up we go. 50k likely, isn't it? It's not that far away, and where the bears are going to have their stops, 50k. So we're going to come up and probably raid those stops. US 500. And they're sold, so we're going to continue higher. So I am not going to do that bubble trade. I'm going to reverse it, so I'll actually be joining the crowd on that respect. And one thing about the bubbles is that they can move. So if the pound bubble comes this way, it's going to be a sell. If it comes, the New Zealand dollar bubble comes this way, it's going to be a buy. So I'm probably going to lean towards that and hope that the bubble does move this way, and it may well do, and that'll be a risk on trade. Okay, likewise, pound Aussie would be a sell as well, which would then disagree with the bubbles. So it's just going to be one of those days today where we've got a big risk on fundamental story that's going to override everything. So just remember to keep an eye on that. Try not to be too bearish, and really you wouldn't want to be too bearish if we are green up here, because that tells us that the crowd are net short. Okay, if they're short, price should go up higher. Okay, and if we're red up there, then they're net long, and then we should see price fall. That's today's video. Hopefully it was useful. If you can like it, that would be great, and any subs would be great as well, and I'll speak to you guys soon.